Downing on the left-hand side, the winner of the last 2 rounds of this British Premier calendar. Matthew Stevens driving up this climb. He's a fantastic climber, a real powerhouse. And now onto the flat, and that's where the track speed of this man, the former world champion on the track, Chris Newton, his 14th season as a professional bike rider. Matthew Stevens in the middle, Russell Downing on the front. He has this really punchy, urgent style, Russell Downing, and when he's on form, he looks absolutely fantastic on a bike. Well, the pace pretty relentless, and it looks to me like they are opening up a pretty huge margin on the chasing group. Out of the saddle, well, I don't know, it might start to come down a little bit because the motorbike is now into view, and we may well see that this chasing group is not going to let these riders go away, because of course we don't have anyone from the Ploughman Craven racing team, no one from Rafa Condor, and we've heard that Dean Downing's had a crash in this race. So Downing, who is 2nd overall in the British Premier calendar, doesn't look like he will score any more points today. Of course, the KFS team, a puncture for Chris Newton. So Newton has been left behind by Matthew Stevens and by Russell Downing. He's had to change a wheel. And now this is going to be a hard chase for Chris Newton. This will give us an idea of how much form this man has got in his legs. Well, he's looking pretty fast. Back up to the front. And Downing and Stevens are, I think, going to do the gentlemanly thing. As Stevens has a chat to the camera, he's looking for a little bit of information. Well, I think that Stevens and Downing have decided, and this very often happens in bike racing, it is a sport with some real etiquette in it. They have decided that they're not going to use the misfortune of Chris Newton having had a puncture to their advantage, and they're now waiting for him, and they're going to let him come back up to the leading group, and then they will get on with this breakaway. Well, that just shows you what a fair sport cycling is when 3 teams like this have decided they're going to work together. Newton back onto the front. Now, interestingly, probably why Downing and Matthew Stevens have decided to wait for him, let him come back up here, is that they know that Newton has real speed on the flat. Stevens has got the climbing ability, and Downing's got that real gritty determination which can pull the gap out. So they are much better with 3 of them at the front than 2. Chris Newton, there we talked about this corner, and now the rain is pouring down. You could just see the wheels sliding on this treacherous left-hander. And we've got about an hour of racing to go. Russell Downing is taking a little bit of sugar on board, having a can of drink. Well, now that the weather conditions have drawn in, these riders will be feeling the wet, damp conditions. That will get into these very lean bodies that they have. Indeed, many of these riders got well under 10% body fat, and when the rain falls and the temperature drops, they really do feel the cold. So they've got to keep themselves fueled up, their muscles fueled up, otherwise they will just blow up completely. They'll suddenly go from having energy to absolutely no energy at all. Well, we mentioned the Ploughman Craven racing team. We are nearing the conclusion of this race, and Gordon McCauley has flown the nest. He's trying to go across to the front group of 3 riders. Well, McCauley having to do it yet again, trying to chase on his own. He really has had a frustrating season, Gordon McCauley. He finished 2nd in the Tour of the Reservoir, 3rd in the Girvan. He was 2nd overall in the Lincoln Grand Prix, 3rd in the Richmond race that was just a couple of weeks ago, and yet again he's missed this important breakaway. Back up to the front, Newton with that fantastically fluid style, just powering the pedals over. Downing looking like he's suffering a little bit here. His mouth is wide open, his eyes are absolutely glued onto the back wheel of Chris Newton. He's just got his eyes firmly focused ahead, and he is keeping this pace extremely high. Well, this race finishes back in the historic and scenic Duncan Park. And we should just mention actually that this Ryedale Grand Prix incorporates the Pete Longbottom Memorial. Pete Longbottom worked for the Ryedale Council. Here is the finishing area, and he was killed tragically when he was hit by a car in 1998. He was a strong bike rider, an Olympian, and he really was a star of the British cycling scene. Well, Newton has decided to go on the attack and try and break the will of Russell Downing and Matthew Stevens. We're heading towards the end of this 115-mile Ryedale Grand Prix. It started off in the sunshine, it's finishing in the rain, and as Pete Longbottom would have wanted, it's going to produce a gritty winner. Stevens looks like he's suffering now, the rain falling off his nose, and he looks like his legs are giving out. We mentioned earlier you've got to keep your body fueled, and Stevens looks like he is just finding the last. Oh, look at the pain etched on this man's face. Every sinew in those arms and legs is now straining, and for the first time this season we've seen Matthew Stevens blow spectacularly. Look at this, the gap is starting to open, and Stevens just doesn't have the legs to go with the attack. He is going to now suffer all his way to the finish, and it would be pretty tragic if Stevens can't get himself onto the podium. Russell Downing refusing to give up, looking around to see where Matthew Stevens is. You can see his teeth, he's gritting his teeth, he's just trying to get back up to Chris Newton. There's the checkered flag, and now Russell Downing cramps up. Well, it shows just how tough this Ryedale Grand Prix has been. Russell Downing, you don't see him cramp up too often. This body is etched in agony as well. Look at this. He is in all sorts of difficulty. These riders have been on the attack for nearly 2 hours of this race, and Newton has left behind in his wake two extremely talented riders and the rest of a strong field of nearly 100 riders. Newton out the saddle, urgently powering his way towards the finish in this fantastic area. What a scene for the finish of a bike race into Duncan Park. He's out the saddle all the time, just powering on, trying to get a little bit more out of that bike. He goes across the cattle grid at the entrance to Duncan Park. He looks around, he's trying to see where Russell Downing is. Well, Chris Newton, he leads the Premier calendar. He has had a fantastic season. He sits up, he won the bike line race at the start of the season. He now takes the 9th round of the British Premier calendar. Chris Newton, recycling, wins. Second place, Russell Downing, just a few seconds behind. And in third place, well, he's held on, but those legs gave out on the run-in. Matthew Stevens of the Sigma Sport Racing team, that's the top three today. Here's the confirmed result. Newton wins ahead of Downing and Stevens. Rob Partridge of Recycling into 4th place. Rob Sharman in 5th.
I was thinking about it last night, and I didn't want to be kind of left out of it early on, so you had to go with quite a lot of moves early, and we're fortunate to have three guys from our team up in the break. It was a bit early to attack, but the attacks were going, so we followed a few of them and ended up being away with Matt and Russell. I wasn't too sure whether to leave it just to a 3-man sprint, but I know these roads quite well, and that last little climb from Sproxton nailed it up there and managed to get a gap and kept going down a little descent, and I started the sprint really from the gates as we turned in, and it just seemed to be getting really steep towards the end, and I was running out of legs and gears, but I held on, and probably Russell was feeling the same behind.
Chris Newton reinforces his position at the top of the British Premier calendar standings. Well, they finished before the rain really started, but onto the top step of the podium, Chris Newton for the 2nd time this season, congratulated by Lady Faversham. Thanks for joining us. See you again soon.